evening, sir.
How's it going, buddy?
Not bad, not bad. Uh, Nice to see some emotion in this game from the players and also from one Rick Tocchet. Uh, he was rightfully very upset with the officials out of that last scrum there. From the very basic lip reading skills that I have, the gist of what I got from Tocchet there was, we're trying to make the effing playoffs, and you're making that effing call. That's a joke of an effing call.
So we'll give an up to Rick Tocchet's speech to the refs.
Absolutely. I mean, he's gonna be fired up going in there in the intermission, and I wouldn't be surprised if these boys come out flying in the second period. That's the most fired up I've seen Tocchet in a while, because they are starting to find some consistency. Like, this group is looking more like a playoff team, especially against other playoff teams when they're pushing the play. The forwards doing a really good job of helping out the D, keeping the middle of the ice clear. The 7 shots that Dallas got, not really dangerous chances. Never really a moment where I was like, oh my God, we need to settle it down. Took a bit of the period for the Canucks to get into it offensively, but after the Pettersson post, obviously, boy, that would have been sweet for that to go in and just silence all the PD haters a little more. I'm just waiting for all of them to start changing their tune and jumping back on the PD bandwagon, so I can just be like, I told you.
Yeah.
But I do think they need to make that center switch. DeBrusk and Boeser just aren't getting enough 5-on-5 looks with Suter out there. So I would like to see them go back with Pettersson, and then Garland and Joshua go down with Suter and play that more of that third line role that they were last year. And then I think we're like right there with our lineup, especially now. We got that second line with Hedl, O'Connor, and Leckermacky. I mean, they're had a couple of really good shifts there. Hedl had a chance on the power play too. He just got there a little late. So a lot of good stuff there. I liked the fire we showed. I just really hated that. I don't know how we ended up with a shorthanded play out of that last scrum. I was watching it and the 2 cross checks wash out, and then I think kind of if you're going to take Joshua, you take one more from them too. Roughing. I mean, all players pretty much were involved in that. It's just one of those ones you should even it up. That should have been a question, and so I hope we get a power play here early in the second, and we can capitalize and get it in the back of the net, because the second unit looked real sharp there with some really good puck control.
It almost makes you wonder if, when and if the Canucks get a second power play in this game, that Tocchet would maybe look at starting the second power play unit.
Possibly. They did a really good job of establishing the zone, and they were snapping the puck around really well, like moving it fast. Crisp passes. I like Leckermacky on the side there, because he does have that threat to shoot, and his snapshot is lethal. That's where he likes to shoot from. And we'll see what they do in the second. Pretty even game, and it's a good measuring stick. Dallas is one of those like cup contender, high odds to win teams to go deep in the playoffs. So if you can put this kind of performance up against them, and you're missing your best defenseman and you're technically your number one goalie, pretty good period. We just have to keep going. Like, we're starting to see some consistency. This is the third game in the row that the Canucks have really come out well in the first period, and we'll see if they can get the opening goal.
Yeah, I mean, impressive too, right? Because a lot of the time you see a team that played last night in Dallas who came out and they were already feeling it. Maybe take a couple minutes for the Canucks to get their legs underneath of them, but to come out of that period only down or not down at all at 0-0. I was going to say we're down. We're not even down. But at one point in that period, the shots were 7-2, and the Canucks ended up, by the end of the period, despite the fact that Dallas had that late power play, ended up bringing it to a 7-6 shot. So really ended up being a very even period, even though they were kind of on their back heels to start things off.
Yeah, one of the things that really sticks out to me is the Canucks have 0 giveaways right now. They're playing very clean hockey, and that leads to success. For now, I mean, it's not obviously you're never going to go a whole game without giving the puck up once, but when they're 7-0, you've stolen the puck away 7 times and you haven't given it up on a actual giveaway. I mean, that means you're making good passes out of your own end, and you're making smart passes, and they're finding the teammates. So if they can keep that up, keep pushing, there is a goal coming. I can feel it.
Yeah. Maybe from Brock Boeser, who is our next topic. So after obviously the whole trade deadline went down and we didn't see a single thing happen on the Vancouver Canucks the day of. I mean, obviously Carson Susie got shipped out the day before, but on the actual day of when we thought maybe they're bringing in some help, they didn't. Now afterwards, we have found out kind of what was going on with Brock Boeser. From what I'm hearing, it was almost a move to Florida. Is that kind of what you saw, the same thing?
It sounds like that one got close. I think he was probably close in a few different deals. But the 2 major ones, like right at the end, where you saw Marchand go to Florida. I think Florida obviously you see the pedigree of a champion in Marchand, and his resume is a lot more appealing if you're paying the same price, if not less, than for a Brock Boeser. Even with the age difference, it's just he's proven more. The other one where it sounded like he could have been heading to Carolina, and they're still trying to dump that contract to Kotkaniemi that they signed him to, and it just I'm so glad that trade didn't happen. Because I just don't think he would have been a good fit for what the Canucks have going right now. That would have been a big step backwards. So I kind of understand where Alvin said, there was nothing offered that helped us now, and that's what they kind of need. Like they were in a wild card spot, right? So technically they are in a playoff race. As hard as this season has been to watch, and as difficult the struggles have been, and as low as the scoring has been, they are still in a wild card spot. And really, when you look at the stats league wide, there's only about 13, 14 guys that are over 30 goals scored this year. Like it's not like it's prolific league wide. So yeah, I definitely think the right decisions were made to keep Boeser and not trade him for those types of deals where it sounds like also one of our high end prospects would have needed to be included to actually complete a Boeser trade. Which then at that point feels a little bit like you're getting fleeced.
Mm-hmm.
When teams are asking for a Wielander or a Lecker-Mackey or a DPD, like no way can you make those trades. So I'm a little less upset about it. And I did take a step back. Similar to last year, Alvin got his work done before the deadline. We kind of hyper focus on that day as like the day to make the big changes to your team, but he did make big changes by trading out JT Miller, and he turned it into Hedel, O'Connor, and Marcus Pettersson, and Victor Mancini. Like, so 4 players added and 1 player out, really, when you look at it. If you want to look at it that way, and then Carson Susie out as well. But that's for a future draft pick. So I think overall I was quite critical of the Canucks on the day and management, but I was able to kind of look at it again and see that, we had done our work, and if the deals weren't right, then in a playoff position, you aren't ready to give up and just sell everything off. Like, we couldn't just go for draft picks, because then you are admitting defeat and you're going towards a rebuild. And I don't think the Canucks need to go there yet. Like they do have the pieces. It's just been so inconsistent and so difficult to have confidence in them to make a run or go on a winning streak or anything like that this season. But the last 3 games, you felt an attitude shift kind of in the team. And it started with Petey's press conference at the beginning of the week when he stood up and took accountability for his own play and apologized for some of the things he had said earlier in the season to the media. So I really think they made the right choice by hanging on to Boeser, and I really hope they can get something done with him. But that being said, we do have the chance to move him again at the draft if need be.
I was going to ask you about Boeser too. Do you think the Canucks are at this point, the Canucks management team are saying, hey, we are kind of suspicious that your performance last year was in part the result of playing with the JT Miller, who obviously is a big presence on the ice. This is your chance to show us that you're capable of being a driver rather than a receiver. So show us what you got, and then we're going to negotiate your extension.
Absolutely. I think, last year gave him a strong case to ask for a certain amount of dollars, but he didn't exactly back it up this year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not really taking it upon himself to push the play or make himself a difference maker. So yeah, with some of Alvin's comments with performance based and hopefully Brock is excited to try and, prove that he still has those 40 goal talent in him going forward the rest of the season. But, it's not a very deep draft, so there is some opportunity to kind of maybe move picks and Boeser around for other players, before the draft happens and also before free agency July 1st.
Speaking of the draft, this is going to be the first time the Vancouver Canucks, the first time in, I don't know, it's got to be like over a decade, that they go into a draft. They have a pick in every single round. They got multiple picks in some rounds.
Right now.
Yeah. But think about that. At this point in the year, you go back any of these all the way through the Benning years, it was we never had a first round draft pick. We never had our second round draft pick. Like those were gone. Like they were immediately gone. Even when we were like, oh, we're a bubble team. We're making trades not to win the Stanley Cup. We're trading away picks so that we can barely make the playoffs. But now all of a sudden, this management team that we're still pretty confident in, despite the fact that everyone was a little upset after the trade deadline. They've got a lot of moving parts still going into the rest of this year and the draft coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And they definitely have some tools they can weaponize going into the draft because as it would be very Canucks-esque, this is probably one of the thinnest draft years in the last 5 or 6 years. Next year is the deeper draft with the Gavin McKenna coming in as the first overall pick. I mean, this year if you're not getting a top 10 pick, you're rolling the dice with whether or not your first round pick actually makes it to the NHL or how successful they will actually be. It's pretty thin after you get past the 10th pick. So with the Boeser stuff and even Suter, they could potentially move them with a first round pick if they go on a deep run in the playoffs and that pick goes further and further down the first round. They could sell it off at that point and maybe take on the rights to an expiring UFA or another team that the end of the year didn't go the way they wanted to, and they want to change things up, and they're looking to move a player out that has some sort of term. The Canucks have the cap room to make those types of trades at the draft. So just because stuff didn't happen right at the deadline, there are ways to still use Boeser's rights to our advantage before it expires on July 1st if he were to just go and test the free agent market.
Do we need to change our focus here in Canucks Nation? Because right now we're talking about the wild card spot, but I think it's almost time to start talking about getting to third place in that division, which would give you a little bit of a better matchup, obviously, for the Canucks. But right now, with where the Kings are at, they're only 4 points up on the Canucks. They've got one game more to play than the Canucks do. However, it is now only a 4-point gap between the Canucks outside of the playoff picture and the third spot in the whole division. Is that what you think the Canucks should be focusing on getting to, or is it just like make it and see what happens?
I think it's a pick your poison. Because if you do get to that point, then you're facing the Oilers in the first round,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be a tough task given the reinforcements they added at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, if you sneak in a wild card, there's a chance you go up against Vegas or Colorado or Dallas. So it's it's really just a matter of just win and make sure you're in, because it doesn't really matter that they're going up against a big team because of their positioning. Um, but it is not out of the realm of possibility to catch the LA Kings and even the Oilers for that matter. If they did win last night against Dallas, but they were up 5-1 in the third period and almost didn't hold on to the lead. So they have not been great since the Four Nations break and have struggled to find their lethal game that they had before. So they're not that far ahead of everyone either. So the Canucks are within, I think, 8 points of Edmonton, and that can change within a week, right? So that's what parity has brought to this league, and it's nice. Teams can fight right till the last day of the season, and sometimes it's for positioning, sometimes it's to get into that last spot.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, obviously with the Canucks schedule too, they've got 8 games over the next 2 weeks, 3 games in 4 nights, the streak that they're on right now. And then they've got games against a lot of the teams that they're in these battles with. They still play Calgary next week on the Wednesday, and they still play a couple of the other teams that they're. I mean, you look forward at the schedule, and you've got a couple of games coming up.
4-point games.
Yeah, a lot of 4-point games. Like this week coming up is kind of where they get everything out of the way, right? You got Dallas, Montreal, Chicago, Utah, Jets. These are all teams that they're not really chasing. But then you jump into it. You got St. Louis, you got that Calgary game. So there's 2 4-point games there, right? And then you're essentially finishing us in April, and all those games are going to be mean something games. So it should be interesting to see what kind of performance the Canucks can put in to finish things off.
For sure. It's definitely going to be exciting end of the season, given that the team is showing they're not backing off and they're going to fight until the end. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and if we can keep on this trend and trajectory of improving every game, we'll see you. We'll see you in the playoffs.
We're gonna save the good news that the Absurd Canucks gave to us last night for the post game show, since we didn't get to it. But spoiler alert, good news is coming up for the Abby Canucks.
Yes, sir. Good. Well, good and bad.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. We'll talk to you in the post game.
Sounds good.
Nothing is perfect.